So as we can see, chapter 2a is a scene chapter, and we have the flavour text, so let's just go straight into that. The Journeyman's Rest. The floor of the inn is hard-packed earth, spread with straw. Patrons are grizzled men for the most part, aged prematurely by hard agricultural labour. They murmur into their flagons and clay pipes and dart roomy glances at the Puritan as he approaches the bar. The landlord slams a wooden mug down on the bar top in preparation to take Solomon Kane's order. "What do you want?" he demands suspiciously. "Hot food and ale," Kane grunts, slightly taken aback by the man's rancour, "and perchance a civil tongue for a paying guest." "Forgive me, master," says the innkeeper. "We don't have so many strangers hereabouts, and those that do come, well, at any rate, I'll bring you pie and ale." "Aye, that should suffice to bolster me on my trek." "Oh, and where would you be bound, if I may be so bold?" inquires the innkeeper. "Torquay town, on the other side of the moors. I'll make the journey overnight." With that, a sudden pall of silence obliterates the pleasant drone of the room, and every eye swivels to regard the Puritan. Okay, the scene is set. We have various keywords and stats that we'll need to deal with. Objective is quite straightforward. We're going to learn about the moors, and then the outcome is going to be based on the number of points that we can gather up. Let's set up the board. So here we've got all the instructions about which tiles we need. We've got the spawn points here, and then all of the miniatures that we're going to need for this particular chapter. I will pause the video while I set this up. We've got the board set up. Take a quick look here. Now, if you'll notice, because we're playing a solo mission, in here it says Temperance, but of course we're playing with Providence as a solo, so we replace Temperance with Providence. Other than that, everything else on the board is as it should be. One other thing to notice with Solomon Kane is, as it explains, this is one space. There's no white line down here, so this is, even though there is obviously two tiles have been used to create this, this is the same space. And the same here if we look at where our virtue is placed. This is one space here. So the fact that we go between tiles is irrelevant. All we look at is the pale white line. That is the boundary of the spaces. We have one shadow on the board, but I have the other 5 at the side here ready if we need them. What else have we got left to do? We need 8 darkness cards for our darkness deck, and then we need to start with these 2 discovery cards. So there is 600 and 604. So we have everything set up. The statistics that it has here, we won't need those until we actually get to talk to some of these people. So we can ignore these for now. Innkeeper, child, these are all talk. So until we actually talk to them, these are irrelevant. But there are some that we need to be aware of. We have a Baroness who is a seeker, and she will always seek towards Solomon Kane. And we have a Dagger Thug who's also a seeker, also moving towards Solomon Kane. And then we have villagers who are scouts. The Dagger Thug, this chap here in this space, so this is him right here. And then right up at the top of the board, we have the Baroness here. We're going to need to remember to make sure we move those seekers at the appropriate time. We can now put our Providence board on the table. This is where it starts to get a bit awkward in terms of just making enough space for everything. I'm going to move these discovery cards out of the way, and let's put our Providence board here. We need our virtue deck. We make sure it's shuffled, and then we deal out 2 piles of 4. This is what you do at the start of everything, whether it's a story or a scene. Then you have a look at each of the decks, and you get to choose which one you want to start with. Okay, well, we know we need to talk to people, but it's also going to be useful to get some light tokens into our sockets here so we can improve our chances, extra dice, extra results for the tests. So that might be quite a useful one. Let's see, this doesn't help us to talk, that doesn't help us to talk. Fight might be useful, don't know if we're actually going to fight or not. And here's the talk, so that's definitely a good one. We do have a talk option. Just move the camera down here a bit so we can see the board. There we go. We do have a permanently available action here which includes talk, fight or explore. However, it's only at a 0, so that's going to make it slightly harder. This one is of course really useful, talk 4. But I think what we will do then is, yeah, we'll start with this deck. So this one will become our draw deck. We just move it out of the way, put it face down so we can't see. That's going to be our draw deck. In fact, just give it a quick shuffle to make sure that we don't know what order the cards are in. And then we pick which of these 2 cards we're going to start with. I am going to start with this talk card. And don't really want these, so what I'll do is put one of these in, and then at the end of the go I can discard that so that we can quickly get through our hand and actually get to some of the cards that we want. So I put the 2 cards that are remaining as my hand over to the side out of the way, and that leaves us free to start reading the discovery cards. Outsider. Unaccustomed to outsiders, villagers twist their faces and glare at the outlandish Puritan as he makes his way to the bar. So let's see, whenever a scout in Solomon Kane's surroundings searches, we have to choose to reduce one of our stats, strength, clarity or compassion, or one virtue removes all dice from their reserve. Let's see, 604, the Bard's Tale. A bard in gaily hued attire strums his lute in the corner and recites an odd story. Kane draws closer to listen. At the end of each virtue's turn, if Solomon Kane is in the surroundings of the town crier, place one, we call that token, onto this card. Solomon Kane gains +2 to talk tests when targeting the town crier for each of the tokens on this card. One thing I didn't point out is this symbol here. This means that this card stays in play. I mean, it tells us here remains in play. This is a sort of ongoing effect that will happen every turn until some other card tells us to remove this, or until we finish the chapter. And now we can start the game. Okay, so we need to think about our strategy. We need to talk to people. The most obvious candidate, very close to us, is the barman. Now, you don't have to be in the same area to talk to a character. It says in the instructions that you can talk from the surroundings. Now, the surroundings means the area that you're within, and then any area adjacent to it counts as his surroundings. Now, if we look at the board where he is, okay, you can see that there is a red barrier here marking out this area. Now, the red barrier means we can't move onto it, but it also means that that is a separate area. As I was just saying, you know, Solomon Kane's area is this, his surroundings is the ones that touch it. This innkeeper is not in an area that touches it, so in order to talk to him, he's going to have to move to here. So our initial strategy, I think, should be to try and get a light token onto this socket. I think that would be a good idea, so we get an extra dice, and then we can use this one here to move. Let's see what we get when we shake the dice, and then we can make some decisions from there. Right, there's our first roll. Now remember, whenever you roll the dice, you can choose to re-roll one of the dice or to flip one of the dice. And we could use the flip to give us exactly what we need here, which would allow us to move one or to place one light token. And we can obviously keep this dice in our reserve ready for the next go. Rather than moving closer this turn, I think what we'll do is we will use this to place a light token on here so that we get an extra dice on every roll from this point on. That is the end of our go. if you remember, we have 2 seekers on the board. Seekers activate at the end of the virtue's turn, and they will move 1 space towards their target. So if we come up to the board, we have our first seeker, which is the dagger thug here. He's going to move 1 towards Solomon Kane. And then we also need to look further up the board to where the Baroness, who is also a seeker, is going to move 1. Now that we've done that, we can move to the darkness card. We're going to ignore this top line here because this is only relevant during a story chapter. Now we move to this first section. Now the first section only applies to things that are near to Solomon Kane. Near means that they are in his surroundings. That means spaces adjacent to him, or the same space he's in. We don't have any sentries, so we ignore the first line. 1 scout moves 1 south. Now this is why the compass token is so important. You'll see on every board layout it shows you how to orientate the compass, and it's used for the AI to be able to control the movement. Now in this game, if you remember when we set up, let me just grab the book to remind you. If you remember when we set up, we had certain keywords against the various different miniatures characters on the board, and you notice with the villagers they have the keyword scout. So effectively the female and male villagers, we have a male one right here, they are our scouts. So 1 scout moves 1 south. We cannot execute that with this villager. There's 2 reasons. 1, he's not in Solomon Kane's surroundings, so this wouldn't apply. And secondly, he couldn't go any further south anyway, because he's already at the southernmost edge of the board. So I'm looking around on the board. Let's give you guys a closer view. I don't see a villager in any of the spaces. Okay, this space is adjacent, and it is possible to move this villager 1 space to the south. Let's just check that there isn't any other. This one isn't adjacent, not in there. Okay, so that is our candidate. We have 1 scout here. We will move it 1 space to the south. What's next? 1 shadow moves 1 to engage. There are no shadows in the surroundings. And 1 hunter fights 2. There is no hunter. Now we move on to the far section of the card. This applies to miniatures that are outside of Solomon Kane's surroundings. We have no sentries, so that's irrelevant. 2 scouts, each move 1 north. Now we definitely have scouts that we can move north. Let's just have a look at the board, and we get to choose. We have got 1 here, but I really don't want to move him 1 north because that would place him closer to us. So what I will do is I will go over here where we have this villager, which is a scout, so we'll move that 1 to the north like so. And at the top of the board there we have another villager, also not in our surroundings. Move that 1 to the north. So there we go, we've moved 2 scouts 1 to the north. What's next? The furthest scout moves 1 towards Solomon Kane. Right, which one is the furthest scout? It's easy to check. All we're going to do is just count the number of areas that would have to be moved through on the shortest route to get to Solomon Kane. So this one would be 1, 2, 3. The gent at the top of the board here would be 1, 2, 3. So, and this chap at the bottom here would be 1, 2. So it's definitely one of those. What about this one? This would be 1, 2. Yeah, it's definitely one of those. Again, we get to pick. So I think we will move. Well, we can't move this lady again because we've already moved her. That's the other rule you have to remember, that you only move a miniature once in each turn. So that actually only leaves 1 eligible villager, the only one really that we haven't touched, this one here. And she will move 1 towards Solomon Kane. Okay, what's next on the card? The closest shadow moves 1 to threaten. Now, I had a bit of a dilemma with this. Technically, it's not possible for a shadow to move 1 in order to threaten Solomon Kane, because to threaten It would have to be in an adjacent space. But I think what we will do is execute the move part of the command. So we will use the move part of the command to move this shadow 1 towards Solomon Kane, even though we can't actually do the threaten part. Now that could be wrong, and I'd be interested to know other people's thoughts on that. What's next? 3 hunters move 1 and fight. There are no hunters. 1 hunter moves 1 and fights. Well, there are no hunters. So that's the end of the darkness turn. 4 dice this time, if you remember, because we have light token in here. We also still have 1 in reserve, so let's see what we get. So let's see, we've got 2 wild cards. Let's knocked 1 over accidentally. Right, we've got 2 wild cards and this. Now, we want to move if we can, and then we want to talk. Let's re-roll this dice and see what we get. Okay, we've got this. So we already had 1 of those, so that will work for that. That will work for that. We haven't got what we need over here to execute this card. That's really frustrating. We'll use this to move Solomon Kane 1 closer. So if we come back to the board, we're simply going to move him 1 closer to the innkeeper. Now he's in a position where he can talk. We've done our move. We will finish our turn there. First thing we have to remember to do is on the board, if I just move this up here so we can see everything, we have to remember that we have to move our seekers 1 space towards Solomon Kane, 1 space towards Solomon Kane. Then we need to go to our darkness card. First item on the darkness card, we have no sentries. 1 scout searches. Do we have a scout in Solomon Kane's surroundings? No, we don't. So that's not going to apply. 1 shadow moves 1 to engage. There is no shadow in the surroundings, and we have no hunters. So this first section, very little to do. Now we move to the far section, things that are beyond Solomon Kane's surroundings. We have no sentries. 2 scouts, each move 1 south. Okay, so we can pick which of the scouts we're going to move. Our choices are limited. We've got a scout here and a scout here. They can't move any further south. We do have a scout right here at the top of the board, so we'll move that scout 1 south. We also have a scout over here with the blacksmith. We will move that scout 1 south. So we've executed that part. The closest shadow moves 1 to threaten. Well, again, cannot threaten, but can move 1. Now the quickest route to move is to move straight into this space with Providence the virtue. Now when a shadow tries to move into a space with a virtue, there are 2 things that can happen. So we can either have a shockwave whenever a shadow moves into an area that contains a virtue, or a virtue moves into the same area as any shadows, a shockwave is triggered. Remove from the board the target virtue and all shadows in the target virtue's aura range. No event is revealed. Note that Providence's aura can increase the effect of her shockwave to remove all shadows within 2. Well, we can do that if we've put a light token onto one of the aura sockets which says increase aura size by 1. Anyway, that's one thing that can happen, shockwave, which means the shadow and Providence will leave the board. The other option that we have is that the virtue can choose to hold its ground. Now in this situation, Providence would remain. The shadow cannot move and would have to stay where it was at the last part, before it moved. But the danger level on our tracker would increase by 1. I think that in this case, we will actually choose to just let the shockwave happen. Shadow disappears from the board. Providence disappears from the board. So that is that done. The farthest shadow moves 2 to engage. There's no shadows on the board and there's no hunters. We do have, though, this symbol at the bottom, which is a spawn symbol. This tells us that a shadow will spawn at spawn point Y. Spawn point Y, you can see on the token, is down here. So we need to put a shadow there ready for the next go. That is the end of the darkness turn. We can now come back to ourselves and see what we're going to do. We are going to roll our 4 dice again. If you remember, we rolled an extra dice. We have 3 dice in reserve. Let's see what we get. We get this. What do we actually want? Well, it would be nice to use 2 of them on here to be able to place a light. I also realised I've been a bit silly. I was intending to switch out this card at the end of each go to get to a card that we'd rather have. I forgot to do that, but I'll do it at the end of this turn, so that's fine, but I will remember to do that this time. We wish to place a light token, so that means that we can use these 2. And we also want to talk. We want to use this card to do the talking. We have got the sun symbol that we need. We have got the round symbol that we need. We've got this symbol that we need. And we need to decrease compassion by 1 in order to execute that. So let's deal with these one at a time. Let's put these in the reserve. I always think you might, well, in fact, let's re-roll this one because we're allowed to re-roll 1. Okay, well that didn't do anything, so there we go. Just keep that in the reserve. Let's put a light token on. I think we'll put this on the +X to all tests. So the X that it's referring to this time is the number of light tokens in these sockets. So we'll get +2 to every test that we do until we're able to put 1 here, and then we'll get +3. So we'll get that. So that is this one executed. We'll get rid of those dice. Now we will talk to the innkeeper. So we will need to move our compassion down 1. Over here, it goes down to 4. And we are starting our test at level 4. We get no modifier from the compassion track, it's on 0. So we start with 4, and what we need to do now is turn over the top event card from our shuffled event deck. And we see that we get 4 because Solomon, these are we're not interested in this bit, these are events, we're just interested in the random numbers. And if you're ever forgetting which random number to use, the player aid, they give you 4 of these in the box, just reminds you that the left-hand number is for crowds and rabble, etc. The middle number is for champions and villains, and the right-hand number is for heroes and nemesis, and that Solomon Kane, as it says here, is always used at the hero level unless something tells you otherwise. So we've got 4 straight off the bat, which is great. We can then add our 2 to that because we have the 2 there, so it becomes 6. And then of course we have the 4 that we started with from the actual card as our base value. So we have easily surpassed the requirement that we needed to talk to the innkeeper.
Note here that I couldn't actually use the 2 bonus points because the virtue's not on the board, so we can't be within her aura. Obviously it doesn't matter because we had way more points than we needed, but I just wanted to point that out because that is a mistake. I also shouldn't have rolled 4 dice because with the virtue off the board I don't get 4 dice to roll. This is a mistake that I realised a bit later in this video, just bear it in mind.
We've got well over 5, so we go to D615. Let's see what the innkeeper says to us. What does it say? Bad business. Now look, business is bad without you scaring people off. All I'll say is that I ain't had a delivery from Talker Town in weeks, but I won't go out on them moors after my missing ale. Bandits most like, though there be those who say something worse, but you'd be well advised to steer clear. Take the swamp road instead. Here's an ale on the house, and you can warm your bones by yon fire, but we've no rooms I can offer. Now this time the discovery card doesn't have the cog symbol, it has this sort of lightning bolt symbol. That means that this is just a do once, and it says what can we do here? We're going to reveal card D641. We're going to add +1 strength or +2 strength if there is a light token on any virtue's dashboard. Well, guess what? We have got a light token on our dashboard, which means we're going to add +2 to our strength. That's great. So let's come up to our tracker. We go 7, 8. That's excellent. So we're now actually getting a +1 modifier on any test that we do that needs strength. We also get to place one of these point tokens. So we grab one of those. There we go. And that's it. This discard is done. We now need to reveal D641. D641. Good cheers. With a well-worn smile, Solomon is handed a mug of grog. Now this card is going to remain in play. It's got the cog symbol. Before resolving a talk test, virtues may remove this card from play and receive -1 to their clarity, but a +2 modifier to their talk test. So this one we can keep handy, and it gives us an option. We executed this one, so we need to take the dice away. We now need to take this card away because we've used it. So that goes into our discard pile, and then we have a look at the two that we had in our hand, and we have to choose one of these. This looks like an easy option here, just to get another light token that we can put into that that final space there. I think we'll go with that. Let's do that. So we've taken one, which means we now need to take the next card from our draw pile of the virtue cards, which is this one. What's this one? Explore for 4, or draw 2 blessings and choose one to place on the cloud. Again, not really sure we need this card particularly for this chapter, so it's in the hand now, but that may well be one we get rid of. And now we can get rid of this card, just because I don't want to keep it in the hand, so that goes to our discard pile. And I can choose one of these cards. Well, let's just put this one in, Guile. I don't know if we're going to need to fight or not. We'll put it in for now. I'll probably just discard it at the end of the next go anyway. But that's that. So that is our turn finished. We need to come back up to the board and let's see what's going to happen on the board. First of all, we need to move the Seekers. This Seeker is going to move 1 towards Solomon Kane. He's now entered Solomon Kane's space. This other Seeker is going to move 1 towards Solomon Kane. She's not entering his space. We only do an encounter when they actually move into the same space. So when the Dagger Thug moves into Solomon Kane's space, we're going to get discovery card D607. Right, here we go, 607. Drunkard. A well-oiled patron barges into Kane, spilling his own drink. Addled and enraged, he squares up to the Puritan. First of all, we get an instant action here, which is a -1 to strength. So we go over and take that down to 7. It's unfortunate, but that's been dealt with now. We don't have to deal with that again. That's a one-time thing. And now we get this sort of ongoing attack. The Dagger Thug changes. So is a Seeker, Solomon Kane. He's going to fight up to 6. We go to discovery card 609. 7 or more, we go to discovery card 608. Or talk, we could choose to talk, go up to 5, 640, or 6+, we go to 680. So we can either fight this guy, or we could talk to this guy. And he's basically going to follow us around the room. So we've moved the Seekers. It's now time to look at the next Darkness card. Okay, first of all we look at Solomon Kane's surroundings. All sentries move 1, no sentries. 1 scout moves 1 east. Do we have a villager in his surroundings? No, we don't. And we have no hunters, so nothing's happening in the near section. In the far section, we have 1 scout searches. That is not going to do us any harm whatsoever. If you remember the cards that we've got, the discovery card 600 said that whenever a scout in Solomon Kane's surroundings searches, then we would have to lose one of these. But there is no scout in Solomon Kane's surroundings. So that's absolutely fine. 2 scouts each move 1 west. So let's see, how should we move the scouts? Let's move, you can't see what's going on down here. Let's move this one to the west. Let's move this lady over here. No. Let's move this gent up here 1 to the west like that. Okay, so we've moved 2 scouts 1 to the west. The westernmost scout moves 1 east. Well, we can't move the same miniature again. Which one is the westernmost? I believe it's this one. So it's going to move 1 east. The furthest shadow moves 2 to threaten. Now this one can definitely move 2 to threaten. It moves 1 into this space. It moves 2 into this. It's now adjacent to Solomon Kane, which means that it is threatening. All hunters move 1 and fight. We don't have any hunters. And then we need to spawn another shadow on position Y. So we put a new shadow on there. Okay, that's the end of Darkness's turn. We now have a shadow threatening us. That's going to affect any test that we take. We can choose to move into the space with the shadow, and that will trigger an event. I think we're going to have to accept that we're probably going to get a -1 modifier to any test that we undertake at the moment. Let's get our 4 dice. Let's see what we get. Right, okay, well, not too bad. We've got two wild cards. We really need, if we're going to use this, we really need that circle symbol. The only way we could possibly get one of those is if we re-roll one of these. Let's re-roll and see what we get. Okay, well that's good. We get another wild card, so that's great. We really need to deal with this guy. Fighting him might be a good option, actually. We do have this guile card, which would allow us to fight. So what would we need? We need a wild card. We need this. We need another wild card. Okay, so that would basically give us that. We'd have to take 1 off our strength. Okay, let's use these 3 dice to put Providence back on the board. We can't move her straight into the area that has the shadow already in it. But if we want to try and use her to maybe get rid of the shadow by moving her next turn, we will place her in a space. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing, sorry. We're going to place her in this space here, which is next to the shadow, and then next go we can take some steps with her to get rid of the shadow by moving into the space with it. We'll see what happens, but at least she's back on the board. So we've used those 3 dice, we can get rid of those. Now we need to fight. So we're going to fight the Dagger Thug. If the minute you take the test is Solomon Kane, we add the current strength modifier. Well, his current strength modifier is +1. Then we have to take away 1 for every shadow that's threatening him. So we take that 1 away, so basically there's no modifier there. There will be +2 if Solomon Kane's within the aura of courage. Well, courage is not in the play, we're playing Providence. We do get to add 2. So we get a base value of 4 from the card. +2 gives us 6. We then need to turn over an event card. Use the hero value, so 6 + 4 is 10. That's a pretty good score. I think we comfortably get what we needed to get. It says fight up to 6. We change this card 7 or more, and we go for 608. So let us go for 608.
Note again that I couldn't use those 2 bonus points, but we still have plenty to pass the test comfortably. I can't do anything about the fact I should only be using 3 dice. You'll just have to remember that that's a mistake on my part. I do apologise. I do pick up on that later on in the game.
608. Out you go. Kane quickly takes control of the situation as with an iron grip on the unfortunate fellow's neck he steers him to the exit, saying, "I think perhaps you've had enough, friend." We get an instant effect of +1 to compassion, and we get to place 1 white dice in the cloud. So our compassion goes up to 5. We have basically 1 dice. That's what the white stands for, a mercy dice. You can use that in place of a rolled dice. Then we have the next part here, which is a woman runs up to the drunkard, grabs him by the hand and apologises for her husband's behaviour. She informs Solomon that a good friend of his died up on the moors a few weeks earlier. We get to place another token there, a points token, so that's another one. We haven't got 6, it's not the end. We remove card 607, the drunkard card, so we can remove that from play. And we can remove the Dagger Thug from the board, so he has gone from the board. And this card See, it was an instant effect, etc. It does not remain in play. So this card goes as well. So that was quite successful. Quite pleased with that. We must remember to take that away. We need to discard that card because we used it. We have in our hand these two cards. I'm not sure that either of these are particularly beneficial to us. I think we'll put this one down, not with any intention to use it, but simply to get rid of it next time. That means we bring this card off the top of our draw pile, add or remove one darkness card. Okay, so that was the end of our turn. We now have to go back to the board and see what's going to happen here. Well, first thing we have to do is we still have a seeker on the board. So the seeker will move 1 and has entered Solomon Kane's area. When the Baroness enters Solomon Kane's area, we have an encounter and it's discovery card 611. Let's see what happens. The pickpocket. An attractive, well-dressed woman approaches Kane, fixing her gaze on his eyes. She bombards him with chatter and Kane begins to wonder if this is some kind of ruse. Instant effect. If clarity is 4 or less, Solomon's purse becomes lighter. One virtue removes all dice from their dashboard. Remove this card and the Baroness from play. Well, his clarity is actually at 6, so none of this applies. So now we look here. If clarity is 5 or more, the Baroness changes. She's no longer a seeker. She is now just a talk. And we have the, and this is what we need to do in order to talk to her. So we'll put the card to the side here so that we remember. And the Baroness is now somebody that we can talk to. And we only need to get 5 or more to actually successfully talk to her. Okay, let's go to the darkness card. Right, starting with the near. We have no sentries. We have a scout searches. We do not have a scout within our surroundings. We have a scout 1 away from our surroundings. That's this lady up here. But that would be in our surroundings. That isn't. So we're okay. We have no hunters. So the first section does nothing to us. We have no sentries. So we ignore that in the next bit. 2 scouts, each move 1 to the north. Well, we can pick whichever scouts we like, as long as they're outside our surroundings. You know what? I think we'll just move these 2 at the top here. We'll just move those straight up. There we go. The closest shadow moves 1 to threaten. Well, the closest shadow is already... well, that's not this section. Actually, this shadow would be in the far section. So it will move 1. And that does indeed allow it to threaten because it's 1 space away from us, it's adjacent. The furthest shadow moves 3 to threaten. Well, there are no other shadows on the board, so we're not going to worry about that. Now, it says that we should spawn a shadow at position Z, but we have to first double check whether it is allowed to spawn anymore, because if we look at our danger tracker, we can see that it's showing us 2 here. So let's just double check on whether we actually are allowed to bring another shadow onto the board or not. Okay, now I must say I do find the shadow spawning slightly confusing, and it's really because they could have made this a lot clearer. I don't know if the person who wrote this part of the rules, maybe English not the first language, I really don't know. But it says when you spawn a shadow, first of all, number 1, check the current shadow spawn threshold. Well, as I said, the current shadow spawn threshold is 2. Then it says, next step, if there are currently fewer shadows in play than the shadow spawn threshold, spawn a new shadow miniature on the board in the same area as the relevant token. Well, we have 2 shadows in play. So the answer to that is no, we already have 2 shadows in play. So based on that, we do not spawn a shadow. However, when we go over to look at shadow spawn threshold in the rules, this is on page 49, it says that the shadow spawn threshold, this is a maximum number of shadows that can be spawned at once. It doesn't say anything about how many are in play. That does not tie in neatly with what it says about spawning. So it's kind of debatable which one to use. I'm going to go with the spawn. It says that if there are currently fewer shadows in play than shadow spawn threshold, spawn. Well, there aren't, so we're not going to spawn. That's how I take that. I would love to know if that's wrong. Anyway, let's carry on. So we've done everything that we needed to do on the darkness card. It's now back to our turn. Let's roll our 4 dice. Here's what we have managed to get. Okay, I think we'll use this card. I think we'll use this over here. Place the light token. We could do with talking to this lady, but I'm really not sure how well we're going to do. We could use this card to give us +2. If we use this to do the talk, we would start with the 0 base value +2. And what do we need to get? We need to get 5 or more, so we'd really have to get lucky with our event card. Okay, let's do that. So we've done this, we've executed, we've put the light token on, so we can get rid of those dice, get rid of that card, goes to our discard pile. We need to pick something from here. How many darkness cards have we got left? We've still got a few rounds left. I think we'll keep the darkness card for now. We'll place this one down. Not really something we need, but we can always get rid of it. We get the last of our draw deck here, which is Resolve. Lets us move 2 or move up to 2 light to different sockets. I think the move 2 could be useful. And then we just need to decide. Go on, let's give it a go. So we'll try and talk to the Baroness. We are going to, we're going to lose 2 though, aren't we, immediately because of the shadows. I'd forgotten about the shadows. No, okay, let's see. Let's see what we get anyway. We get a base value of 0. I'm going to use this card. We get -1 to clarity. That brings it down from 6 to 5. But that gives us +2, so that's great. We get the +2, and then we add it to the +3 from here. 1, 2, 3 tokens, so we get 3. So that gives us 5. But now we have to remember that we have got 2 shadows threatening us, so we're going to have to take 2 off. So that brings us down to 3. Now we have to turn over the top event card. Use this value here. That gives us 3. 3 and 3 is 6, which means if we go over to here, talk up to 4, this card 5 or more, we get to turn over D6, 12. Okay. Not fooled for a moment. Solomon is wise to such tricks and sharply grabs the lady's arm. I have nothing you need, lady, but perhaps you know more about the Moors. The lady winks at Solomon and tells him to have a peek at the ledger by the bar. We get an immediate effect of +1 to clarity. That puts us back up to 6. We get to place 1 exploration token in the space. No, this is one of the cards that they have put on the FAQ as a mistake. It says it needs to be in the surroundings of the innkeeper. Remove D6, 11 and the Baroness from play. Okay, so what we'll do is we will get an exploration token, and it says we can put it in the surroundings of the innkeeper. Well, guess what? If we come up and look at the board, we can put it right here because we are in the surroundings of the innkeeper, so we'll put it in our space so that we don't have to move, which is excellent. What else does it say we need to do? Remove D6, 11, which is, that's the card that is about the pickpocket, so that's gone. Remove the Baroness from the board. She's gone. And anything else we need to do? Right, now we need to look at this. So this is the ongoing activity. Solomon Kane may target the exploration token with an explore test, hoping to glean anything he can from the establishment's ledger. If we explore and get up to 6, we discard the token and this card. 7 or more, and we get to read card D613. And that's actually quite useful, because this card, which I didn't think I'd have any use for, actually gives us an explore with a base value of 4. So that is quite useful. We'll probably give that a go. What do we need to do next? We've executed that. There's no seekers on the board that we need to move, so that's all done. Let me just bring this back up here so we can see the board. Let's turn over the darkness card and see where we go from here. No sentries. Have we got any scouts in his surroundings? No. One shadow moves one to engage. Okay, so now we have to do this. So this shadow, we'll just move this one. Moves in to engage. As soon as a shadow moves into a space with Solomon, it disappears. And what we have to do is we have to turn over an event card and see what it says. Wavering Faith. Reveal one random sin card. We get sin number 7. Lust. A sensuous and passionate desire for something. Solomon's prowess begins to fill him with an insatiable lust for more power. His mind becomes clouded and he loses his focus. Whenever a virtue rolls the heart surrounded by the corona, discard it. This remains in play until we put a light token on the socket. So that's going to be irritating to us. So whenever we roll this, instead of being able to use it, we're going to have to simply discard it. So we've done that. Where did the darkness card go? So we've dealt with the shadow moving one to engage. We have no hunters. One sentry, we have no sentries. The closest scout searches, well, that's not going to do anything to us, we're not bothered. The closest shadow moves one to threaten. There's no shadow in the far range, so that's okay. No hunters and no hunters. And we will spawn a shadow at position X. Well, we will, because now we only have one on the board. So position X up here. There we go. That is the darkness card finished. Now it is our turn and we need to get rid of, I think we need to get rid of this sin card as quickly as we can. Let's shake our 4 dice. Let's see, we got 1 wild card, 2 wild cards, 3 wild cards, and this. That's not bad at all. Let's use 2 of these. I think we'll just use these 2, like so. We'll put those in our reserve. And that allows us to place a light token. So we're going to get rid of this sin straight away. Light token on the socket, card's gone. We must remember that we have a dice in the cloud. If you remember, we got this that we can use in place of a dice. Does this give us enough to do the explore? It does. If we remember the explore card here, -1 to clarity, so take it down to 5. We can use a wild card for here, we can use that for there, and we can use this dice for that. So we're absolutely fine. We will perform an explore test. Our base value is 4, then we add our modifiers, which is going to be 3, so that gives us 7. We then need to take 1 off because we have a shadow threatening us, so that gives us 6, and we don't actually need to bother turning over an event card to get... Oh, hang on. Sorry, this asks for a bigger score, so sorry. We had 4, 5, 6, 7, -1 is 6. We do need to turn it over because we need a 7 or more, and we get a 5. That's a pretty good number, so we're well over the 7. No problems at all. Let us remind ourselves, what are we going to do? Discard the explore token and turn over D613. So get rid of the exploration token. Okay, card D613. The ledger. Entries in the ledger clearly show deliveries to and from Talker Town have gone missing. Bandits or wild animals cannot explain it, and Kane suspects something darker may be the cause. Instant effect here. All virtues place 1. Looks like that's just the circle dice into their reserve. Okay, that's fine. Okay. We place 1 green dice into the cloud. We place 2 points on, that's good. So we're up to 4 now. If virtues have 6 or more of those, and we finish, we remove D612. Right, we have 3 darkness cards left. We have no seekers. We need to get rid of these from the table. We need to get rid of this card. We now need to choose one of these 2 cards. I think we'll use this card. I think we need to move across the board now. Try and find somebody else interesting to talk to. I feel like the Bard's Tale, if you remember this one, where we get +2 tests when targeting the town crier for each token on this card. I think we'll go for that one for now. Now I have to shuffle my discard pile because I have no draw pile left, and then we take the top one to give us our second card in our hand. It's a fight, gain, guard card. Okay, right, it's now Darkness's turn. No sentries, no scouts. One shadow moves one to engage. Well, that's going to happen. So, I always forget to move this up. Let's just come up to the board. So this shadow will move one to engage, goes off the board, and we get an event card. The event card says, Gnawing Enui. One virtue removes all dice from their reserve. Well, we only have one in the reserve, so that's gone. We get +1 to the danger. That takes up to 4. That's it. That's not too bad. We've got no hunters. Now let's move to the far section with no sentries. The easternmost scout moves 2 west. The most eastern scout we've got is this lady here. She's going to move 2 west. That's 1, 2. The southernmost scout moves 1 north. Well, we've got 2 scouts to the south, so we'll just move this one to the north. The closest shadow moves 1 to threaten. The closest shadow is this one. It's going to move 1, but it can't threaten. We have no hunters. Yeah, we have no hunters, and we are going to spawn a shadow at position Y, which is down here in this bottom corner. Brings us back to our turn. Okay, so it's our next go, and trying to decide where we go next. We've only got 2 darkness cards left available to us. We do have another darkness card in the cloud, so we can always grab that if we want to have another turn. We also remember that when we do a talk activity, you can do that in your surroundings, which means you can do it to a character who's in an adjacent area. You don't have to be in the same area. So my plan here, if we look at the board, I was going to try and make my way over to the town crier, but I actually think instead we'll try and talk to the young lad and to the shepherd. If I can get a move 2, I can move down 1, 2, and then I can actually talk with either of these characters because we're in a space that is adjacent to both of them. Obviously there is a downside to that, which is that we have this shadow, so we will suffer -1 to our tests, and also I'm going to have to try and move Providence because we would be outside of her aura. I'm just wondering, do we do that, or do we move to here, talk to the shepherd, allow ourselves to get... Do you know what? We'll do that. We'll move to here, then the shadow won't be a problem. We can talk with the shepherd, and we can collect a token at the end of the turn to just help us when we talk to the town crier. We would also stay within Providence's aura without having to move her. So, do you know what? Let's do that. We are within her aura at the moment, so we get to roll our 4 dice. Here's what we've got. Have we got enough to move? Let's re-roll this dice. We get that. We do have enough to move. We're going to have to use our 2 wild cards, so that and that. That gives us that card. We can now move 2. We'll move Solomon Kane over on the board, move him 1, 2. We only have 1 dice left, so we're not going to be able to do anything else right now, so we'll put that in our reserve. Take those dice out of the way. We need to discard this card, and then we're going to have to pick a new one from our hand. I think this is a good time to take this finesse card to allow us to add another darkness card, because I'd like to keep going on this mission. This is the next card we draw from the draw pile to add to our hand. I can choose to discard this, which I'm going to do, which means we can take one of the cards from our hand. We don't need explore, we don't need this. I will just put this in just so we can get rid of it next go. We draw another card. Courtesy. We can reduce danger, or we can add a light token. Again, not really something I need. We really need a card that lets us talk. So we will see when we get one of those. Okay, so that's everything done with me. Let's turn over the darkness card and see what it says. We have no sentries, so we don't have to worry about that. One scout moves one north. Okay, so this is a scout, a villager, within our surroundings. Obviously, this is within our surroundings, she's within our surroundings, so is she. So I will choose to move her one to the north, put her up there, and come back to the card. We have no hunter, so I don't need to worry about that. Now we move to the miniatures that are sitting outside of our surroundings. We have no sentries. The furthest scout moves one towards Solomon Kane. Well, the furthest scout, just come a bit further up the board. Okay, the furthest scout is going to be one of these two right up at the far side of the board. So it doesn't matter which one we do, we're going to move one towards Solomon Kane. So we'll move one, there we go. Next item. The northernmost scout moves one south. Well, that will be the lady, the villager here. She'll move one south. The farthest shadow moves two to threaten. Okay, the furthest shadow. Let's see, this shadow is one space away. We have this shadow down here, which is 1, 2 away. So 1, 2 to threaten. We have no hunters, so the last two items don't matter, and we have no spawn on this card. So that is the end of Darkness's turn. It's now our go. Oh, there is one thing that we forgot. Oh, I say we, but one thing I forgot. We did have him in an area adjacent to the town crier at the end of our turn. So I'll just place one of these tokens on. I should have done that. So I'll just place that on the card as it says, at the end of each virtue's turn, if Solomon Kane is in the surroundings of the town crier, place a token onto this card. So I forgot to do that, but it's no harm. It's I've just remembered now. Let us see what we get with our next roll of the dice. I think we want to add another darkness card. So I'm going to use these two to do that. To talk to the shepherd, we actually only need to get 4 or more. I think that's worth a gamble. So can we use this? Well, we can use our flip action to... well, we don't actually need to do it because we need that there. So I'll put that there, put a wild card there, put the other wild card in here. So let's go through these one at a time. So first of all, we're going to add or remove a darkness. So we take a darkness card from the supply deck and we place it underneath our darkness deck. So that has been executed, and we will discard that card and put in a card there. We now need to draw another card to bring our hand back up. Again, neither of these is a talk action, so neither of them is perfect. Put that there. We can then execute this talk activity here. We're going to talk to the shepherd, which means we're going to do the talk test. Our compassion is at the 0 modifier, so we're not going to get anything from that. We get a base value from here of 0, so we don't get a base value. What we do now get, though, is plus X to all tests. So we start with 3. Then we have to look and we see that we have got a shadow adjacent to us, so that is going to take a 1 away. So we have 2 as our starting value. We now turn over an event card, and we see that we get 3, so we add that to the 2 to give us 5. And 5 is more than enough for what we needed, so here we go. Shepherd, 4 plus, we need to turn over discovery card D601. The Gambler. A game of chance, sir? Solomon looks down at a table to be greeted by a gummy, toothless grin. He shudders. But perhaps humouring this fellow might yield some local knowledge. So we have an instant reaction here. Immediately discard 1 event and take note of the nemesis number. Okay, so we take an event. There's the nemesis number. It's the same number we use for heroes, and it's a 1. Okay, so that was a 1. And take note of the nemesis number. Okay, virtues must guess whether the next discarded event will have an equal, higher or lower nemesis number. After deciding, discard another event and compare the two nemesis numbers. Well, I feel reasonably comfortable taking a gamble on this and saying that it's going to be higher. So let's take the next event card and see. It's a 4. There's a fairly good chance it would be higher. So let's see what it says. If the virtues are correct, reveal D638. Otherwise, choose, we either discard a darkness to guess again, or we remove the shepherd. Well, let's go to D638 because we did guess correctly. D638. The gambler's debt. You're a lucky one. Unmoved, Solomon asks the man of what he knows of the moors. Well, the moors be haunted, sir. Some sort of dark magic, they say. I daren't take me flock up through there since the bodies started showing up. Okay, so we get an instant effect. We get to add another point token. How many have we got now? 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5 now. We also get to add a luck dice there. And then we remove the shepherd. So the shepherd is gone. If the virtues have 6 more points, we finish the game, but we don't. So we can get rid of that. We're all done. That means that we need to take away these dice. In that case, we can now turn the next darkness card over and see what they are going to do. No sentries. A scout moves 1 south. We do have a scout in our surroundings, this one, so we can move her 1 south. 1 shadow moves 1 to engage. We do have a shadow that moves 1 to engage, so it goes in, it engages, which means we get rid of the shadow. We turn over an event card and we see what it says. Cruel Transfixion. All virtues remove 1 dice from their reserve. Okay, there goes our reserve dice. +1 danger unless the prudence miniature is on the board. Okay, danger goes from 4 up to 5. That doesn't change anything other than we can now have up to 3 shadows on the board. So that is the end of that event. What else happens? We have no hunters, so we finish the near section of the card now for the far, the ones beyond the surroundings. We have no sentries. The northernmost scout moves 2 south. Well, the northernmost scout is going to be any one of these, really. I think I'd say this one. So we'll move 1, 2 to the south. The easternmost scout moves 2 to the west. The easternmost scout is this one. 1, 2 to the west. The farthest shadow moves 2 to threaten. Well, it doesn't actually need to move 2 to threaten, it only needs to move 1. All hunters move 2 and fight 3, there are no hunters, and then we need to spawn a shadow at position X. So we need to put a shadow over here. Okay, that is the end of the darkness turn. Now, if I'm not careful, I forgot to do it again. We finished another go next to the town crier, so we've got another of those tokens. I keep remembering at the start of my next go. Now we need to be really careful. Unless we use the darkness card from the cloud, this would be our last turn, because when we turn the next darkness card over, it'd be the last one, which means that would be the end of the chapter as we finish the actions on that card. We do have, though, the darkness card in the cloud that we can still use. So let's see if we can successfully talk to the town crier this turn, and that might be enough for us to finish off the game anyway. We'll roll our 4 dice. That's a pretty good roll. We've got 3 wild cards. Let's see what we need to get to actually talk to the town crier. We need 12 plus. We've got 2 tokens on the card, which gives us a starting position of 4, but I think we would be extremely unlikely to get 12 plus. We would get our 3, let's see, we'd get 4 from the tokens, we would get 3 from here, so that would bring us to 7. We would then lose 1 because of the shadow, so that would bring us down to 6. I think what we're going to have to do is put these 3 into reserve. Get rid of that because we have got our full reserve. I'm going to discard both of these cards, which means that I get to pull a card from here, and then I need to refill my hand, which gives me these 2, and finally we get the talk card again. And put that there. So next go we actually have something useful to us. And I think that's all we're going to do this turn. We will also take the darkness card from the cloud. Put it underneath because obviously don't want to finish this go, want to have another turn. And we get the token for ending our turn next to the town crier. Let's turn over darkness card and see what they are going to do. No sentries. A scout moves 1 to the north. We do have a scout. Let me again, I keep it over here. So a scout in our surroundings moves 1 to the north. So she's been moved. A shadow moves 1 to engage. This shadow will move into engage. So we take that off the board. Turn over the event card and see what it says. Deep indecision. 1 virtue removes all dice from their reserve. Oh, that's unfortunate. So we have to get rid of all of our reserve dice. That's horrible. 1 virtue removes 1 donated. We don't have any donated dice. +1 to danger unless a prudence miniature is on the board. So danger goes up to 6. And this says place 1 luck cube. So place 1 of those in the cloud. So that's not good at all. I really wanted those reserve dice. Okay, so we've done the shadow engage and we have no hunters. Right, now we look at the further section of the card. We have no sentries. The closest scout searches. Well, the closest scout outside of our surroundings, we don't care if it searches. It's only if it's in our surroundings that matters. The closest shadow moves 2 to engage. Okay, well that would be this one, moving 2. It can't move 2 to engage. It can move 2 though to get to there. The furthest shadow moves 2 to threaten. Well, we only have 1 shadow on the board and we've already moved it to 2 and it is threatening, so we can't do it again. And we have no other hunters, and then we need to spawn a new shadow at position Y, which is the one down here in this bottom corner. Okay, so that was Darcy's turn. If I'm playing this right, if I've worked this out correctly, this will be our last turn. So we really need to get lucky with the dice. We need that, and we need that, and we need that in order to talk. That's what we're going to do. Okay, we put those there. We're going to give this a go, because this is our last go anyway. So we're going to talk. We need to take 1 away from compassion. That brings us from 5 down to 4, but it's still a 0 modifier. So now we need to work out our score for talking to the town crier. We are going to start with a base value of 4. We are then going to add our 3 to it, which brings us to 7. We're going to take 1 off because we have that shadow threatening us. That brings us to 6. And then if we remember the Bard's Tale card, for each token that we have on here we get +2. So we were at 6. That gives us to 8, 10, 12. That's pretty good. And we then look at the story so that it tells us when you talk to the town crier, we turn over card D605. There we go, D605. Tale of the Bard. The Bard's song is about an old man whose house is made of fungus, and he himself transforms into a poisonous mushroom. Could such a story be based on truth? Kane wonders. We have an instant action here. All virtues place 1. Well, that's just basically means anything into the reserve. We're not going to use it. We place 2 points tokens. Okay. We've done that. Now at this point, we say if virtues have 6 or more points, we are basically at the end of the chapter. So let's see how many points we've got. Over on the cloud here, we leave these, remember, for the next story. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 7. Okay, well we have got more than 6, so that triggers the end of the chapter. Okay, so the instructions say that when you trigger that end of chapter, we simply look at the outcome here and we see, based on these results here, if you have 6 tokens, so obviously we have 7, we're going to proceed to 3A, and then if we had 3 to 5 it would have been 3B, and 0 to 2, which I'm guessing is bad, would have been 3C. So we just have a quick look here because we've finished this part of the act, we've finished this chapter. The next chapter, where's it gone? 3A. Here we go. The next chapter is another story chapter, 3A, and I will pick that up in a separate video. I do hope that this has been useful. I apologise, it's the first time I've played a scene chapter, so if it seems a bit clunky, that's because it's the first time I'm doing it. You guys are learning with me as we play the game. That's the whole point here, is to just make our way through it. I'm sure I might have made the odd mistake here and there, and I appreciate anybody calling those out in the comments so that we can all learn. And I will film the next story chapter and the next scene chapter, etc., and get those uploaded as soon as possible. Take care wherever you are.